Well, hey, it's Paulie here. Yay, Mr. Snoots. Some more transgender history for you. I'm going to just touch on the life of Lynn Anne Conway. You're watching this probably on a phone, computer or laptop. Yeah, that's thanks to Lynn Anne Conway. She created much of the architecture of whatever machine you're watching this on, specifically chip architecture and the creation of wafers which have multiple processing chips on them. So, Lynn was born assigned male in 1938. Sadly passed away last year, 2024. Had an exceedingly long and incredibly fruitful life. So, from very early years, she was extremely gender dysphoric. Parents divorced in 1945, and she was very, very, very troubled in high school with gender dysphoria. Male gender presentation gave her an enormous struggle. So, when Lynn graduated in 1955, she went to MIT. She graduated high school, incredibly high marks, swept straight into MIT, and there she began to attempt a gender transition. But she found that there was absolutely no physical, medical or emotional support for it. In other words, she came under bigoted attack from everything around her and was forced to drop her attempted transition and flee the university. So here you can see one of the things so constant in trans life. Lynn's desire to live as a woman was absolutely sincere. She did not detransition because she wasn't sure. She transitioned because of bullying, because of social stigma and social pressure. That's why people detransition. So I'm very sad for her that her first attempt failed. So, Lynn worked as a electronic technician for a couple of years, and then she went to University of Columbia to complete her education. Came out with a Bachelor of Sciences and a Master of Sciences in Electronic Engineering, I believe. Got the first in 1962 and the second in 1963, which is pretty fast track for a master's. And then went to work for IBM, straight into IBM. Working for IBM, she was brought in to work with an elite team that were attempting to design a supercomputer. There were some very great names of computer architecture design involved with this. I am not in any way a scholar of electronics. Yeah, if you really want to know about Byzantine court politics or strange religious cults of the English Civil War, I'm Miguel. Electronics, not so much, even though I was like a computer game designer in the time. But yes, it was one of the first successful creations of a machine that used superscalar design, which is a massively intricate style of parallel processing. So this was a massive technological leap for computer architecture. But while there, she heard about Dr. Harry Benjamin. Now, Dr. Harry Benjamin I mentioned in my video on sexology. Benjamin was a pioneer of transgender care. So Lynn went to him, and after long consultations and many visits, Lynn was prescribed hormone replacement therapy and began to transition again, thinking that she could transition at IBM. This was in 1968. She began transitioning at IBM. IBM immediately fired her for the crime of being transgender. No excuses, no ifs, no buts. You are fired as clearly one of the principal dawning geniuses of computer design. Your gender transition trumps all that. Get out, bitch. It would be almost 40 years before IBM apologised to her for that, since she was battling for better ethics within the electronics community at that time. She accepted their apology. She's a better woman than I am. I would have shoved it up their ass sideways. But, so, not only did they kick her out, but, yeah, she got divorced as well. She'd married in 1963, struggling desperately with her gender role as a man, really struggling to make it happen. Had 2 children, as so many of us do, guilty, and yeah, she got divorced at the same time she came out. The wife wasn't having it, and by the legal codes of the day was forbidden further contact with her children, because of course, you know, she was pushed as a freak. So there she was, one of the great computer geniuses of the era, unemployed. She worked as a contract programmer and as a electronics designer for a while. But then she took up with Xerox, of all people. When was that? 1973, so she did about 5 years in the wilderness there. But she was brought into the experimental department of Xerox, and that's when she really blossomed. She stealthed it. She came in as a woman, with no reference to her past at all, with documents changed for her new ID and her new identity. Just came in as a woman, told no one that she was trans, and was simply accepted entirely as a woman. And as such was loudly lauded over the next couple of decades as breaking the gender barrier in electronics and computers, because of course it was entirely a sausage fest. Yeah, a few surgeries had taken care of that one, I'm afraid. Right, so at Xerox she teamed up with, who were they? Ian Sutherland and Carver Mead. And in 1978, Lynn created the formative book on VSLI, which is, what is that? It's very large-scale integration. So VSLI is a type of chip design which allows you to put more and more processing power into one computer chip. There was a thing called Mead's Law, which you've probably heard of, which says basically computer processing power, will double every 2 years. Well, technology was actually having trouble keeping up with that, because design styles at the time were pretty much try it and see. It was manual, hands-on. There was no way of making essentially digital prototyping to see if this worked. And there was also a massive disconnect between physical hands-on electrical engineering and that discipline. And computer architecture was a little bit more kind of airy-fairy. The twain rarely met, but Lynn had both of those backgrounds. Once kicked out of the wilderness by IBM and so on, she had a great deal of experience on the hands-on electronic and electronic engineering side. The book that she created brought both of those sides of that architectural and design process together. And this 1978 textbook became and remains the formative book on the subject. It became the textbook. All chip design for computers since that date has been founded on Lynn Conway and her colleagues' work. And that's how you're watching this today. So, a triumph. So Lynn moved on. After, I think, 1983, she went to work for DARPA, which is sort of the defense research people for the American Defense Department. Yeah, I know. But she was formative in the project for the Strategic Computing Initiative, which was the project to develop machine intelligence and AI. To make lots of lovely drones and killbots in the current century. But again, formative design. Again, she was much lauded for breaking the barrier there. She actually married again in 1987 to her husband Charlie, and they lived a long and happy married life together as man and woman. They shared many, many, many interests. Lynn was a bit of a tearaway. Was like really into whitewater rafting and abseiling and all these kind of adventure sports. So quite a lass. So in 1985, Lynn left DARPA and became a professor at University of Michigan, and eventually retired in 1998, Professor Emeritus there. And in 1999, with all of this career behind her, came out publicly as trans. Obviously her husband and some very close friends knew, but no one else knew. But she came out very publicly in 1999 and became a very, very, very potent transgender activist. Positioned as she was pretty much as one of the people who had helped start the internet, she made the first transgender supportive websites that had medical advice, that had medical contacts, that had emotional advice, that had psychological advice. This was where you could go to find out when you were questioning. This is where you get your answers. There were chat boards where you could talk to her and talk to, other people who have transitioned. You get your advice, you get your support. She also ran a website, it was Transsexual Women's Success, which was a list of the achievements of transgender women, past and present. Again, a very important piece of early internet. She also worked very hard to bring ethics into the electronics and computing industries. Essentially, she never wanted anyone to undergo what she had, being fired for being transgender, and she got these codes of ethics passed. She was quite a powerhouse. There's some other kind of cool stuff she did. In 2024, she was one of the stars in LA of the Vagina Monologues. She was one of the performers on stage doing one of the parts in the Vagina Monologues. Fantastic transgender woman up there, and not just any transgender woman, Lynn Anne Conway. So it's just been this amazing life. Wafer design, chip design, design tools, digital prototyping for creating computer architectures and chip architectures and so on. This is all her work. This is what allows us to design computers and so on today. So Lynn passed away in 2024 of complications from heart disease. However, at this stage she had lived a long life and an incredibly fruitful one. Electronic engineer, founder of computer architectural design, a founder of transgender activism. She made a meteoric path through the electronic profession, which had been totally dominated by cisgender men. She was it. Now these days, of course, if you're talking tech support, half the room is going to be trans. So those of you, my trans sisters and brothers out there who are doing tech support, IT, computer and electronic design and so on, Lynn Conway. Lynn Conway was your spiritual mum. She was your forebearer, and basically she created the banner that you're carrying forward. Bless her. I am desperately sorry for her about her failed transition, that it was forced upon her by bigotry, by bullying, and by outright hatred. I am furious that IBM fired a genius for being trans. I am glad for her at her triumphal transition in the end. I am sorry that that led to divorce and not seeing her children again. This happened to me. That is painful. It is painful every day. But she carried on to achieve amazing things and to eventually marry someone and live, happily. And they lived happily till the end of her days. Lynn Anne Conway was a transgender superstar. Remember her name with honour and with love, and think of her every time you pick up that phone or every time you hook into the internet. Thanks, Lynn. Anyway, that's us for now with another instalment. I'll bring you some more transmasculine histories because they are important. It's very important that our transgender brothers are not in any way pushed aside. It's just that I know at the moment transgender women are very much under attack, but transmasculine identities are coming under the scrutiny of vicious bigots as well. And trans men have always been here. We've all always been here, and we always will. Much love to everyone out there. I know that the UK, like the USA, has descended into being a raging hellhouse. As I've said, we're holding the line here in Australia. We're going to be a citadel. We're fighting this crap. We've had our politicians sign transgender protection pledges. We've had our ministers of gender affairs say that those laws will never be a part of Australian law. So we're holding the line. Much love to everyone out there that's struggling. And remember, get out there, be seen, be magnificent. Much love. Hi. Well, you want to push it. All right, he wants to push.